Hello again, and I'm back. I want to show you where I'm at, what's going on. One of the viewers asked if I would show how to do this with foam, because I said I didn't care whether I used the existing body panels and patched them together or used foam. So I'm going to show you real quickly how to do foam and what I've been working on. My plan was to actually do it, but it's getting late, and I spent the whole day prepping for this presentation so I could show you all the different things that I'm doing and using. So let's get to it. All right, let's see. First off, I needed to, everyone's been asking how I get things symmetrical. All right, what I do is I use patterns a lot. Okay, so what I needed was, let me move this out of the way, because all the stuff I've been working on. Okay, so I'm going to use foam. I'm going to put a piece of foam on here because this needs to be raised up to meet here and to meet here. You can see there's a gap across there. I need to get rid of that gap. So this surface needs to be raised up to here. What I could do is I could go in here, remove all of these screws, put a piece of wood under here, trim this right here, and then make this come up here. That would close this gap over here. The problem with that is I'm screwing with where everything's located. I've got everything on this body exactly where it needs to be. If I start messing with that, I could knock something out and make things crooked. So I don't want to do that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this surface up. Now the disadvantage of that is I have this nice surface that's flat and level and all that, and raising this up seems like it would be a whole lot easier. But again, if everything was firmly attached to the rest of the car, I would do that. But if I come here and I can actually stick my hand in where the tail light is, and I move this up and down, it doesn't move a whole lot, but it does move a little bit. If I move these screws, I'm afraid that the whole thing will be able to move a little more than I want it to. Anyway, it's a choice. I decided to go that route, and it's going to work out well. All right, foam. Oh, so then I needed this edge. I'm going to use a piece of foam, stick it on here, and so I needed to work on this edge. What I did was I got a piece of my paper. I got a big roll of this from Home Depot or any of the big box stores. All right, and I made it, cut it, shaped it right there so that it matches that curve, because I care about that curve. When I put the piece of foam on here, I want it to match that edge. All right, the other thing I do is, if you look, I have lines all over. These are alignment lines. Of course, I used a tape measure and all the different tools to measure everything as I was building this, and so I keep these reference lines. I actually made special reference lines off of this to make sure everything's centered and relative to this. So once I did this, then I needed to get a piece of foam. All right, the foam I used over on the other side is this stuff, this pink foam. I don't know what kind it is. We've got a chemist that's in our fiberglass group, and he knows all this stuff. I don't know. It's all ISO something. Anyway, they call this XPS insulation. I don't know what that means. Don't care what it means, except for the fact that what it means is if you get the fiberglass resin that I use on it, it eats foam. You can see right there, right here, I put box tape on here, clear box tape. So obviously it doesn't attack the clear box tape, but you can see exactly where the box tape ended, and the resin got on there and it started eating away at the foam. It doesn't, obviously you can see it doesn't completely destroy it, because that's the limit of what it's going to do, but it does destroy it. So I obviously wouldn't want that to be a top surface. Okay, so this is not the best foam to use. I got it just to test and see it works okay. If you use this foam, you just have to make sure that there's some barrier in between the foam and the resin when you put it on. This is polyester resin. If you use epoxy, you don't have a problem. Epoxy doesn't attack this. It's only the polyester resin. All right. So an easy way to do that is you could actually do it, sand it, smooth it, just like I'm going to show you how to do. Then you could cover it with paint, like a latex-based paint, house paint, whatever. That would be a barrier. You could use a lot of different things, as long as whatever you use doesn't attack that. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, So then when you are cutting the foam, there are a bunch of different methods you can use to cut the foam. One of them is just a big knife. So you can use that. One of the problems with this is, especially with this foam, and this comes into up to an inch thick. So if you got this an inch thick, the knife starts sticking when you get about in the middle of that. If you've got this, start sticking on this too. This is kind of thick. If you get any thicker than this, it's really difficult to use one of these. All right. You can also use a hacksaw, as long as you could turn the blade sideways. I have this one, I think it'll turn sideways. It'll turn a 45-degree angle. Or in this case, that end handle comes off, and you can stick the blade inside of there, have it stick out, and you could cut it. And because the blade's so thin, it wouldn't stick real bad. That's another option. What I ended up using is just a little steak knife. Okay, because it's thinner, it doesn't stick as bad, so that will work. The ultimate tool though, well, one of the good tools, is the vibrating cutter. The advantage is, because the cutter vibrates all the time, it doesn't stick. It just eats through that foam like butter. Here's another bit or cutter blade for this. If you want to get a straight line, this works. If you want to get a curved line, you can use that. And there's a wider one of these around here somewhere. Oh, right here. There you go. So it's a little wider than that one if I wanted to try to get a straight line. These happen to be tungsten, I think it is, tipped. Because of the fiberglass. If you try to use the regular ones, fiberglass eats it up in just seconds. You can only make a couple of cuts. But in the foam, obviously it wouldn't matter. You could use the cheaper ones. I have these, I use them, so I just keep using them for the foam. Doesn't matter one way or the other. All right, if you need the foam to be thicker, like I said, I saw this at 1 inch. Let's say I needed a 2-inch piece. You need to stick them together. I've used hot glue in the past. The problem is the hot glue, when it cools off, is really hard. The advantage is, of course, it hardens real quick and allows me to tack stuff in place quickly. Okay? What works better is this Gorilla Glue. It actually is a foam when you put it down, when it cures. It does require moisture to cure. So be sure and read the directions. You have to spray it with one surface with water. And it expands a little bit. The advantage is it's nowhere near as hard. It's closer to the density of the foam than hot glue. So I use that if I need to attach things together. Ideally, I try to make it to where the glue is not any place where I'm going to sand through, but it's not a big deal if it is. All right, what else do we have? Oh, speaking of foam. All right, so I did a test a while back, last year in fact, found out that pink foam does get eaten by the polyester resin. This other foam does not. So if you look, this one is a polysocyanurate, I guess. Anyway, if you look there, it's polyiso, it's RMAT. This does not get eaten by polyester resin. So this is better. I didn't see it in the thicker, different thicknesses at Home Depot. So if this came in the same thickness as that one, it would be better. The disadvantage is it's got paper, whatever, and foil on the other side. You need to take that off. It does peel off relatively easy, not real easy. Maybe if it soaked it in water. I didn't try because it does come off well enough. Anyway, so this is what I'm using in this case, okay? And it's because this is thin enough that will work. I'll show you that in a second. All right, again, getting back to the symmetry thing, this back piece, I need a curve here. What I needed to do is I need to fill this in, and it needs to blend in here. So it needs to go from this thickness here down to virtually nothing somewhere along here. Where did I find out that somewhere? Well, I took a straight edge. This will work. And I put it on top of here. And then what I did was I looked at where there's an air gap. The sun happened to be on the other side. But anyway, I looked at where there was an air gap. If you look, the air gap disappears right where my blue line is. So if you look, I went and made periodic lines, little dashes. I put it here, found it, oh, there it touches, there it touches, there it touches. So I went all along there and found out about where this thing is going to be. It didn't really matter, but I just wanted that so that I could cut the piece of foam that I needed. All right, now once I did that, I wanted it to make a uniform curve across here. So what I did was I repeated that process all along here where it touched. Then to make the curve to connect it, at first I drew it by hand, and you can see it's a little bit crooked. I wanted a uniform curve, so what did I do? I got a straight edge, and I took it and I just marked the middle. All right, and then I put a screw on this side and a screw on this side. All right, if you take a piece that's got uniform properties and you leave each end with 1 degree of freedom, is what's called in engineering terms. Anyway, it's not restrained, it's only pushing against it. Okay, so if I do that and I do go to the center of this piece and I push it down, I know, well, if it would stay in place, okay, I know the curve is going to be uniform because it's supported there, it's supported there, and it's supported in the middle by my finger. So that's exactly what I did, and then you can see I took my Sharpie and drew the blue line there. So now I have a uniform curve so that I know that this is a mirror image between the two sides. Now, if you have something that is constraining it, I've got 2 screws there. All right, so now if I try to get a uniform curve, there's no way I'm going to get a uniform curve because that is keeping that end from being free to rotate and just use the properties of the material to make it the right curve. So you just have to make sure that, right there. Okay, same way if I twist this, then it's not going to work. It's going to make more of a comma shape. I've got more curve here, but right there is just going to relax because there's nothing making the twist on that end that is here. So when you do this, just make sure that it's only pushing in certain points and you're not deforming it. What else do we have? Okay, so then I use this. So then what I did was got a piece of foam right here, piece of this. I cut it out of right there. I set it up here. The first thing I did was put this against there and made sure I had the inside curve correct. So if I look at this, there we go. It was like this. All right, so I made this curve match. All right, once I did that, then I needed it to go underneath this edge. It didn't have to, but I liked that. That way it'll constrain it. I left these screws here because they are reference points. When I do put this down, I'll lose those reference points. I'll lose this line, I'll lose these reference points. By keeping these screws in there, I don't lose those points. I'll just have to fill in the screw holes later, no big deal. All right, so this goes here. Oh, I have to go in underneath that edge, and then that goes there. All right. Now, what I did was, if you look, this goes underneath there, so I had to make a step right there where it steps and goes underneath there. So it makes it a little more difficult to get this in place. And it is a tight fit. I made sure it was a tight fit. So once I get it here, I literally have to force it up in there, but you can see that it's got a nice tight fit. Okay. And so it follows this edge, comes over here, there's the center line. It lines up more or less. It's not critical because I haven't cut it yet. All right. And then you can see what I did was where the blue line was, I ran the knife along there so that when I peeled off the paper, that I still had a reference. Otherwise, when I peeled off the paper, I would lose my blue line. Okay. Now, symmetry. Let me show you how that works. Okay. Since this works, there's my center line, there's the fender, there's the eyebrow. All right. I could have made this all one piece, but then I would rely on my ability to make this curve symmetrical. So instead, I just take this thing and I'll make a pattern out of it, flip it over. When I do this side, I will, let me see, there's the holes right there. There we go. Okay, that line, if you look, it's on the other side, right there, it lines up. That's the center line. So at some point I could cut it off here. I like leaving a little extra. Don't know why, it just feels better. All right, so there you can see that it lines up with the curve there. When I get through with this, it's going to line up with that curve right there. Okay, so that'll make sure these two sides are symmetrical. Where this eyebrow ends is exactly where the edge of this is. All right, so now I know that because I'm using this foam and templates, that everything is going to match. As a third sanity check, I have this template gauge right here. So I took it, stuck it in here. You can see right there, it even shows where the screw holes are, or where the screws are. So I pushed it up against this edge. This is hard to do one-handed. All right, and then I checked it against this, and it matches as well. All right, so the next thing is, I have this piece of foam. I need to attach it to this, okay? Because I am not going to sand through this, I can use hot glue. So I've got a hot glue gun, I didn't plug it in. So I could put a strip of hot glue across here, and somewhere along here, I wouldn't want to go all the way to the edge, because when I sand this down, this is going to be down to nothing right here. So obviously I don't want to sand down to the hot glue. So I can put hot glue along this edge, and then, you know, a couple inches, maybe an inch or two above here, enough so that the hot glue won't interfere. Put this in place like this. There we go. Okay, and so then I can push the foam down against the hot glue, hold it for a couple of seconds or tape it or whatever. Again, this edge needs to go under there. There we go. This, like I said, it's kind of hard to do. It's easier to do with two hands. In fact, it's really easy with two hands, but with one hand it's a little difficult. All right, so then I can hot glue this. Now I do have a choice. I could force this down and then put the hot glue, or I can put the hot glue and actually use it as a spacer, so this is level. I can do it either way, it doesn't matter. The reason why I'm saying that is because I'm going to cover this with fiberglass. I already know that the fiberglass I use is going to end up being 1/10 of an inch, about that thick. So ideally, this thing would be at the right level, 1/10 of an inch lower. So this, you can see that if I push this all the way down, it's about the same, the thickness there. So I could do that. This would have to be undercut 1/10 of an inch, or sanded in this case. This would have to be cut down a lot. In fact, it goes to 0 right there, you can see. Okay, so I'm going to hot glue this. Then I am going to sand this, shape this, so that all of this tapers down to nothing. It just so happens that, like I said, I use this because if you look, that's pretty much the right height. So it will be relatively easy once I get this hot glue down to sand this down to the right contour. Sanding, okay, I can sand it, which is what I'm going to do because so little has to be taken off. If I was going to take a lot off, I would use this. This is a body tool. It's used for body filler. When you put body filler on, you know, it's kind of a creamy peanut butter type texture, sometimes thicker, sometimes thinner, depending on what body filler you use. Before it hardens, it goes through a state where it becomes solid, but not rock hard like this. By the way, don't use Bondo. It literally turns rock hard. This other stuff that I use doesn't turn anywhere near as hard. It's a lot easier to sand. Bondo's, I mean, it's almost impossible to sand. Anyway, so while it's changing state, it gets to this semi-firm state. And you can use this cheese grater to get rid of the high spots. If you're like me and you're not real good at putting it down really smooth, you can use this. The disadvantage of this is it puts little grooves in it. So you've got to be careful that you don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, then you just have to go fill in those grooves that you put in there. So you get it close to the right shape, but make sure there's a little bit extra, and then you can sand it afterwards. All right, speaking of sanding, here's all the different sanding. Oh, okay, so you can also use this if you need to do major shaping. All right, this is an electric fillet knife. It worked great. One of the things I found out, though, is especially when using that pink foam, because it's so dense, is that one of these knives I got in the past had plastic gears in here that make the knife go in and out, and it stripped the gears because it got stuck in the foam. So you need to make sure that it has metal gears. I don't know how you do that without taking it apart. The only reason I knew is because it stripped. I took it apart and I went, oh, there's the plastic gears and they're all stripped. So the knife was useless. Another option is to use a carving knife, electric knife. I got one at Walmart a while back, I think it was $10 back then, less than $10. I think it was $8, $9, something like that. I looked last time I was there, and one, they didn't hardly have any, and two, they were like $15. Still not a big deal. Those, I have not had a problem with them ever stripping the gears out, okay? They don't have the pointed tip like this, so you can't do any detailed foam work, but you can rough cut a lot with that. All right, so the other things, I have a sanding board here for a body filler. All right, it also works for foam. I have one here that I got at clearance. It didn't have the handle, so I got it for, I don't know, 10 bucks or something. The advantage of it is somewhat flexible. So if you have a surface that's, you want a little bit of curve, like when I was sanding this, I didn't want the flat board here because this does have a curve to it. So that one that I used, I flexed it, and so it worked really good for smoothing this out. All right, I'm using, this is 36 grit right here. I use it because I'm taking off a lot of material. As you get closer and closer, you want to use finer and finer grit. But I've been pretty much using 36 grit until I started doing this, and then this is 180 grit. The 36 grit leaves some deep sanding scratches. You can see the sanding scratches here. When you get to the 180 grit, it has sanding scratches, but they're not nearly as visible. And so you get to finer and finer grit to get rid of the sanding scratches. What else do we have? I think that's it. That covers everything I'm looking to see. Oh, if I didn't want the fiberglass to stick to the foam, I would put a barrier in between. So I could use this right here, clear box tape. You can use masking tape and it will slow it down, but the resin does soak into the masking tape, and so the masking tape kind of adheres to the surface. Again, that depends on whether you care or not. If you use the box tape, the fiberglass literally pops right off because the fiberglass doesn't stick to this at all. If you use this, then the two will stick together, and if you ever want to separate them, it's a lot more difficult to do. If I had the piece here, so let's say, for instance, I happen to have this piece right here separate because I made an extra part or whatever, okay, and I cut it out of here. What I could do is put a piece of glue a piece of sandpaper to this, to the back side of it, put it on here, and then rub it back and forth. And as I rubbed it back and forth, it would eat up the foam, sand away the foam, and I would get this exact surface on top of this foam. So that would be an option. Remember how I said I could put foam across here and carve it? Well, I could also put foam across there. And here we are. Let's say this piece right here is going to go, where does it go? Right there. Okay. So I could glue a piece of foam here and purposely make it a little big. Then I would use the cheese grater to cut it down, the knife, the cheese grater, sandpaper to get it somewhat close to that shape. Then I could glue sandpaper onto this. If this screw wasn't here, I could then put this on here, and then I could sit here and move it back and forth a little bit, and eventually it would sand that down to where I would have that shape into the foam. That actually isn't a bad idea, so I might do that. Before I did that, if you notice, this backside is somewhat smooth, but not real smooth, so I would sand this smooth, and then I would do that. So I might do that in a future video, just to show you, and you can see whether you want to do it or not. What else do I have? Okay, so anyway, my next step is I'm going to hot glue this down. It's getting late, so I'll probably quit. And then I'm going to, I would use this to rough cut this, but honestly, the foam sands so easy, it is unbelievable. So I probably won't do that. I will probably use one of my sanding blocks, probably this one. Okay, oh, and I have another, oh, here's another one. If you don't need a flat, even area, this thing right here, I got it on Amazon. It's a really nice one. It has little clips to hold your sandpaper. There are several options for sandpaper. You have these ones that have the clips, and you can just get regular sandpaper. They have sandpaper that has a sticky side to it. So you pull it off and you literally just stick it here. You could use it on this one. This one right here has a clip on one end, but it doesn't on the other. So this is the stuff that has the sticky side. You could also do it yourself with contact cement or something, but why when you can buy this? This one's the same way. It has both. Again, I got it from Amazon. It has clips, or I just, in this case, I already had the sticky sandpaper for this, so I just used it. This one right here is hook and loop, Velcro. All right, this one also, I found it, again, I found all the stuff at clearance at body shops. This one has a hose, so you can hook a hose up to it, a water hose, have it trickling, and so that it actually flushes away everything as you sand. This is really a two-handed deal. But anyway, so this is a mesh cloth, all right? And it works with the hook and loop where, right there, it's Velcro there, all right? And so you can change grits. This is in little links and they're perforated, so you just break it off, tear it where you need it. You don't have to use scissors even. The advantage of this is if you've got sandpaper that's gummy, you can literally take this off and clean out the sandpaper. Ideally, you wouldn't have gummy paint, but if you do, I've used that in cases. I've been using the rattle can paint and primer in one, and one of the problems is it does turn gummy sometimes, so that works for that. All right, I was going to put body filler and primer on here, but I ended up spending the whole day getting everything prepped for this video, so tomorrow I'll probably do that. I did think what I'll probably do is go ahead and run a quick layer of body filler on this, skim coat, sand it smooth again, then decide what to do about the primer and all that stuff. All right, I got a big day ahead tomorrow. I haven't been feeling well. I've got a cold and I'm getting over it, but I'm not over it yet. It's unfortunate because it was a beautiful day today and I was kind of under the weather. But anyway, all right, I guess that's it. So I'll have another video tomorrow where I will show you probably what I've done. I might actually video me doing the work. I haven't decided yet. The problem is it takes 10 times longer to do anything when I'm videoing it as opposed to just doing it by myself without worrying about the camera and where it is and talking and doing all that stuff. So I will decide tomorrow which route I'm going to go. I'm behind where I want to be schedule-wise, so I might skip that. Let me know if you really want to see me sanding and doing all that. I'll be happy to do it for you. Anyway, like, subscribe, hit the alert, and I'll see you next time. Bye.